Welcome to the presentation of AcuWorkOrder, an Acuboost product published by Information Integration Group, IIG. AcuWorkOrder is a work order processing enhancement published in Acumatica code set. It gives you the ability to generate manufacturing work order transactions, and it will allow you to track your quantity on work order and required for work orders. Will let you schedule your work orders on a drag and drop scheduling board by creating multiple views based on work order type, status, date, range. And it would at all times show you the shop floor available capacity by machine code and utilization of each machine by month. It will also, on a nice screen, would show you the requirements for all different bill of material levels of a given item. And it will allow you to do your due diligence, and based on the replenishment method set for the item, generate a purchase order, work order, or a transfer sales order. Also, it allows you to auto schedule work orders, either from sales order processing or from a program by, and it will look at the promise date, and it will look at the other work orders scheduled for the shop or that machine, and come back and tell you when that work order could be scheduled. So you could give that date to the customer. It would even allow you to do that for his quotations, allow you to reserve that spot for a few days for his quotation system. What I'm going to do today, I failed to mention this earlier, is to go over this PowerPoint presentation. It should take about a few minutes, and after that, I'll start showing you the actual program. As part of AcuWorkOrder, we also allow you to do your manage your phantom bills, do QC notes and activity entry, overhead allocation, outside processing. Will create a transfer sales order, allowing you to ship a product to a vendor warehouse specified by the vendor. And when you enter the AP bill for the PO that we generate for outside processing expenses, will generate a transfer, bring the product back. We will let you create work orders for repair when the cost of the item is changed by the material and labor consumed, and do partial or full disassembly work orders. We'll also have some process manufacturing functionality where we'll let you set up molds by item, enter components as a percentage of the batch size, create multiple finished goods, and do part tracing. On the roadmap for 2021 is work order assignment and approval. So this is the kit specification program, and basically what it does, it allows you to enter all the components. It allows you to group components into group A, B, C, and you link this group IDs to different steps in the manufacturing process. So basically it allows you to assign all the components in the very first step, very last step, or throughout the manufacturing process. We let you manage your yield percentage, scrap percentage for each item. You can also have options, so you can enter for each bill what are the options for that. Here are some options that you created for the item that we were looking at. We'll at any point we'll show you the manufacturing tree structure. You can see all the different levels. You can drill down to each one of them and see the information for that level. This is the routing program where you see the steps that go into manufacturing process. The standard run type field is used to specify the duration. We will create a labor entry in the manufacturing transaction. Of course, it's a setting. Based on this setting, we can also, based on settings, we will load your labor that you will enter as part of kit specification into the manufacturing transactions, or you have to enter the labor as is consumed. You tell it when the product should be manufactured. We create a kit assembly transaction when this step is closed. But for each step, we allow you to tell it whether the labor and material consumed should become part of the cost of the item manufactured, or should be loaded into the sales order and get invoiced to the customer. These combined with allowing you to generate work orders from the sales order processing gives you the ability to have job shop type processing when you're creating work orders, and you are defining options and loading labor material for the option into the work order. This is the planning scheme. So this program goes through all the bill of material levels for every item here. It will come back and calculate demand and allow you to generate a purchase order, transfer sales order, work order into the system. We allow you to see the demand by week. So if you see demand of 100, how many of it you need next week? And of course, you can do things like you can filter it, save the filters, every group of items here, and you for the 10th of the month purchasing, or the end of the month. You could save those. You could load demand from an Excel as what if quantity and use that what if quantity as part of your replenishment here by adding it to the calculated demand or using it as the calculated demand. We allow for the manufacturing transactions to release the transaction to shop floor, and we'll create an issued transaction in Acumatica, thus making that inventory get committed, the lot number, the serial number, the item to get committed in all Acumatica availability calculation, and in different transactions. You can no longer use that information. This is the work order entry program. So you generate work orders either from the work order entry program or the calculated quantity produced, or from the sales order entry program. This is a traveler printed. This is the manufacturing transaction. So manufacturing transaction is created in each step in the manufacturing. You can enter labor by clicking start and end time. For the labor entries, you can scan the components into the shop floor. The machine can generate work orders from the sales order entry program. This is where when you're generating a work order from a sales order, you have the ability to have the system tell you when you can promise the work order to the customer based on other work orders that are scheduled and your entered shift by machine for the days of the week. This is when, if your step is the labor and material should be loaded back into the sales order. This screen pops up, of course, if the work order is generated from the sales order, the sales order is the value is defaulted. In the routing program, we also let you enter QC codes. In addition to that, you can specify overhead allocation and outside process by routing steps. So the QC codes entered here are loaded into the manufacturing transaction. You can tell it whether an approval is required, which is a security event. Here is the QC codes loaded into the manufacturing transaction. We let them enter the resolution code, the value. You can tell it by problem codes whether values need to be entered. Overhead allocation codes, again, linked to routing steps. Kit specification. We also, for process manufacturing, we let you enter the recipe size, enter components as a batch size, enter multiple finished good. So here, what's entered in the first tab becomes ingredients that get allocated to the different finished goods. And each finished good, of course, has its own bill of material, and certain items like labor or for a paint, the can, the lead, the label would be loaded from the finished good, and the portion of the ingredients would be loaded there as well. This is our scheduling board. Every cell here represents a manufacturing step, and you can drag and drop things from one to the other. We have this chart which basically would show you every machine code, what work order is scheduled on it. This is on the 25th of the May. Any month what's scheduled on each machine. You can drill down to the work order right from here. These are our dashboards. One dashboard shows you the capacity utilization for the next so many days by machine, and here shows you the capacity by month utilization of each machine code by month. I'm going to start showing the actual program by demonstrating the calculated quantity to produce purchase worksheet. So what this worksheet does, it goes through all bill of material levels defining the system for every item, and it will come back and show you a calculated demand based on all the transactions that are in the system. You have the ability to right from here to do your due diligence, look at the different bill of material level, look at all the other transactions that are in the system, look at the kit specification, the bill of material setting, and basically modify the numbers as needed. So you could basically generate the transaction for the needed numbers. So it's very easy to create a transaction. If I want to generate a purchase order here for a quantity of 2, I just select that and click on generate purchase order, and the system will go ahead and generate a purchase order for a quantity of 2 of that item for me. I could go into the purchase order form and see that. I can have it generate work orders for me. So if I'm here and I want to generate a work order for a quantity of this item, I can just select it and click on generate work orders, and it will go ahead and do it. I could basically change the items here by using filters. So if I want to just see a group of items, I'll enter that name and the system would only show me those items. I can use other values as filters for me as an order type, specific customer, specific ship date. Maybe I want to see what actions I need to take if I want to ship all the orders to the end of the month. I could put in a starting few characters of the item, and it'll go ahead and show me all the items that match that in the system. So we're looking at all the items that are starting with DSP. And I guess there's none there. I can have it show me all the items, even if there's a zero quantity, and it will go ahead and do that. If I want to generate a purchase order for, a work order for this, I could put in a calculated demand of 2 and just click on generate work order. Now again, I could load from an Excel numbers as what if quantities and use that what if quantity to do my generation. Now, if I click on generate work order now, the system will ask me the options that I've defined for that kit specification, for that bill of material. I can answer that. Then when I click on OK, it will go ahead and it will generate a purchase work order for that. So I could go in and look at the work order generated. And I could see that work order generated with one transaction. So I'm going to quickly take us to the kit specification form and show that item with its routing and perhaps another item. So here is that item that I just manufactured. It's a championship banner, has a couple of items here, some labor maybe, options are defined here, and a routing of final production is linked to it. So if I come in here in my routing, I can look at the final production and see that routing. And you could see that routing has one step and the item is getting manufactured in this step. If I want to look at some other items, I could perhaps look at an item, Christmas decoration, and see the components that are part of that. Now here for this bill of material, I have items groups into components grouped into group A, group B, and I have the ability to, in the routing tree assembly, to tell it which step in the manufacturing process this component should be loaded. So that gives me the ability to load, to issue all the components in the very first step or the very last step of the manufacturing process. So if I come in here and select that tree assembly, you'll see that to manufacture that Christmas decoration, you have 4 steps that go into that process. Of course, there's a QC step linked to that. I can tell it other things as part of that routing process, overhead charge codes, whether or not it's an outside processing step. And what we do if it's an outside processing, we let you link a warehouse to the vendor. We'll auto-generate a transfer sales order to ship the product. We'll create a PO for the outside processing charges, and when you enter the AP for that PO, we'll create a transfer, bringing the product back. You tell it again the group code. So here, every component linked grouped as A would get loaded into this step, and every component linked grouped as group B would get loaded into this step in the manufacturing process. You tell it in which step it should create the Acumatica kit assembly transaction. The rest of it, the components, labor, and material issued will become part of the finished good cost. Here we have a step that we've told it that any labor and material entered there, you want to load into the sales order, invoice the customer. Maybe there are options that are billable and want to bill the customer for those options. So coming back to our calculate quantity to produce program, I can basically decide if I wanted to generate a work order. Perhaps this one, I want to generate a work order from the sales order processing to show us how that process is done. So I go into the sales orders and I will add a my Christmas decoration item here, and I'm going to tell it that I'm going to generate a work order for it. I'm going to give it a quantity of 2. And now here, what's going to happen is that I have a quantity of 2 that I want to generate a work order for. I click on generate work orders, and what this is going to do is going to look at the routing that I've selected. There's a routing is also a field here that you can change. The revisions of field here you can change, and you could click on generate work order. It will go ahead again. It would show you all the items selected. So if you have a sales order with 4 or 5 items that you generate in work order, they will show them all. Show them all. You can select which one you want to generate it. You could, if it's optional, of course, it would be required. You could select what option you're selecting. You click on OK, then basically comes in here. Now, what this program does is it gives you ability to auto schedule this work order or backward schedule it, or even if it's a quotation, reserve it. So if you wanted to enter a date, any day, and see for that date, do a backward scheduling and see when that work order needs to be scheduled, you could do that, or you could just have it auto schedule, and it would look at all the machines that are assigned to that routing, and it will come back and tell you at what date it gets started. So you could give the customer that date as a start date. Right now it's telling us the start date is 6/8. So now you click on generate work order, and it will go ahead and generate a work order for this item for the quantity of 2. A work order got generated. And then the nice thing about it, again, depending on the routing step, you could have a step that the information gets loaded back into the sales order, your invoice to the customer for it. So these are the 4 steps. If you recall, the 3 assembly routing had 4 steps to it. If I click on any one of these steps, it will bring up all the components that are grouped to group ID A. So I could basically remove it off the hold, save it. We have 2 actions. One is allocate components, and when you select the allocate components, we'll go ahead and create an issue transaction in Acumatica. And if you entered lots and serial numbers, we'll create the issue transaction with that information. It will be on hold, and what that does, it would reserve that inventory that nobody else can ship that product, nobody else can transfer that product, but it's an issue transaction exists. And we create a receipt transaction for the finished good, again on hold. So in all your Acumatica inventory allocation screens on different forms, this information is no longer available. So you can do the allocate components. So now that I've done my allocate components, if I go into the Acumatica, there'll be an issue transaction sitting in the inventory module that you can see, which would basically let me know and let Acumatica and everybody know that that inventory, that lot number and so forth is no longer available. It's reserved. So basically, so this is, I guess this is our earlier work order. We come back to our work order to go back to our work order and continue maybe another step or 2. Then we'll come to our dashboard and we'll look at the dashboard and some of the information there. So now if I look at my manufacturing transactions, I have 1 transaction here that I've allocated the inventory to. So the next step there would be releasing it, and basically release, it knows that that inventory is no longer available. So release is a function that we do. We move the inventory to a different location in the warehouse, and depending on the setting, that inventory is no longer available in Acumatica to do any functions with it. So that's basically what happens with the inventory that is assigned to 2 work orders. You go through. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is that if I come to any one of these manufacturing transactions, I can scan the components used. Let's go to a different transaction. I can scan the components that are used. So you could scan those out, or scan those as parts. Or if you're entering labor, you could click on start and end and capture the labor. Now, In our AcuWorkOrder, whether or not it loads the labor into the generated manufacturing transaction with the entered hours into the kit or not, it's a setting. The same thing with the routing duration, whether you want to load it as a non-stock item into the work order, that's also a setting. So you have transactions that are generated accordingly. Also, if there is a QC link to any one of the steps, like in here, the routing, the first routing had a QC to test for the leak. So that gets loaded. So you can go ahead and enter the values, and based on the setting, approval could be required. But you can enter notes, and then basically there's screens available that show you whether or not that inventory is available or not. When you release a manufacturing transaction, we will actually post that to VIP. Again, it's a setting. We don't have to do it, but here it would tell you that the VIP posting, it would do a VIP posting, post a VIP to the general ledger. If you set it up to post to VIP, it will go ahead and post the VIP to the general ledger. Some of the other things, scheduling dashboard. So what this form does, this dashboard does, it gives you the ability to look at all your work order changes. So if you're going to start it at 2 o'clock, you start it at 4, or you could do that. Or if something is going to take longer, you can just drag it and make it longer. You could change the status of the job. If it's on the shop floor, if it's completed, you could change that to completed, and it will change the status of it to indicate that that's a completed work order. So, and of course, you can click here and drill down to any transaction or the work order right from the scheduling board. In addition to the scheduling board, we have this chart which basically goes through and it shows you the day, and for each day what work orders you have assigned for and which machine code. You can filter what machine codes you want to see, at what starting ending date, or what in customer inventory. It will show you what's being worked on. As for dashboards, we have 2 dashboards we use here. We have a dashboard which shows you all the work orders, different status, but one shows you machine capacity, plant capacity for each machine code for the next 20 days. So you'll see what's planned on each machine. The other chart shows you the utilization of each machine for the last 12 months. So you can see how many work orders you processed in each one of them. So basically, this is a quick view of our work order processing. There's also reports available that lets you see cost plan versus actual part tracing, open work orders, pass-through work orders. There's also a recording for more industry-specific process manufacturing, repairs, partial disassembly, and job shop orders. So please, if those are any interest, view those as well. Thank you for your opportunity to show you our product.